Welcome everyone, happy sunny Thursday, welcome to Tortoise, welcome to the Tortoise Book Club, a lovely end to the our Tortoise Education Summit, which we've had all of today. I don't know if anyone here joined us, but Tortoise Book Club is always my favourite night of the week. My name is Mary P. Mills, I'm a partner and editor at Tortoise, and this evening we are being joined by Cash Carraway. She is an award-winning playwright, a screenwriter, an author, most notably of her brilliant memoir, Skint Estate, which she's here to talk about and read from tonight. Before she does, I'm just going to give you the rules of a ThinkIn. I know you know them, but just in case you've forgotten, you've been automatically muted when you've come onto the call, just so we don't hear any background noise. But we do want to hear from you, and Cash would love to hear your thoughts and questions on her book, on austerity, on the portrayal of the working class, all of it. And there are two ways you can do that. You can raise your digital hand by loitering over the participants icon at the bottom of your screen, and then a list of names come up, and at the bottom of that you can raise your hand and I will come to you. And the other way is you can chat to my colleague Liz Mosley. Say hello, Liz. Who's in the chat function and also looking forward to hearing from you there if you're feeling too shy to speak out loud. So Cash, let's start by going over to you for a little reading. I know you've got a bit planned. Just tell everyone a little context before you start.
Yeah, of course. Hello everyone, thank you for coming, and I must say you're looking very professional tonight.
I think we now have to explain to everyone that I just ran off to put a jumper on because I thought I looked naked and unprofessional. So thank you, Cash. You look lovely too.
Yes, I thought I'd read a little bit from a section called Scroungeress about how difficult it is to find a home when you are living in poverty. But I guess I'll just let it speak for itself. It's 11 AM and I'm in a kebab shop in Haringey. It's cold and drizzly outside, which only adds to the bleakness of the moment, but things take a turn for the even worse when I spot the man I'm meeting. We've never met before, but I know it's him because if I was casting a paedophile in a film, then it would definitely be this guy. Skinny fat, bus shelter tan, holding a dog lead, no dog. He looks just like how he sounded on the phone, his voice wet-lipped and high-pitched in tone. He is wearing a dirty blue ski jacket and baseball cap, which he doffs upon seeing me. He is definitely the man I am meeting. After all, he is the only person other than myself and the greasy grill boy behind the counter hanging around kebab shops so soberly in the day. He stands to greet me, goes in for a hug, but I hold out my hand, which he shakes limply. I had anticipated dampness, but I think he has eczema or something because I've left the greeting with half of his skin on my sleeve. Did you bring your daughter? She's at school. We sit down and he barks at the grill boy for a large doner meat and chips to share. Would you like a tin of drink to have all for yourself? Diet Coke, please. He tells me about the room, that's why I'm here. I found the ad in a shop window. It's got a single bed and a small chest of drawers and a faux sheepskin rug, which is machine washable. But the room hasn't got a window. It's a cupboard really, but it's free. If me and my daughter want it, it's free. He just wants the company, he says. He's telling me he likes to help out single mum trouble. He knows how tough it is out there for single mums. He was brought up by a single mum himself, he says. He says he's a good guy. To demonstrate just what a gentleman he is, he pulls a ring on my Diet Coke and pours half of it into the dirty glass, maintaining eye contact like we're sharing some connection before pushing it my way. And then, if you could stay in my bed for half the week, that's all I ask. The room is free. 4 nights out of 7 perhaps, maybe 5, then your daughter would have her own space. They need their own space, don't they, at that age, to grow. I'm good with kids. I've never had my own, but I love children. Always wanted my own, but I'm away at weekends. Back up to Leicester. My mum, she's disabled, so I go up and take care of her. Wheel her around Leicester at the weekend. You don't have to do anything with me. The room is free. I'll never ask you to touch me, although I do love to kiss. French kiss, that's what I like. Do you like sloppy kisses? You have lovely lips. You don't have to kiss. You don't have to do anything you're uncomfortable with, I promise. Just lay there, in the bed, and sleep. You won't even know I'm there. I won't penetrate you. I just like to touch myself while a woman is close by. And the last mother who took the room stayed for a whole year, and sometimes she'd let me kiss her. Can't be that bad. I'm a gentle soul, really. I'm a generous man. The room is, have some kebab. Can't eat alone. I've got this to share. The kebab is the best in Haringey. This is all on me, by the way. My treat. My flat is just around the corner from here. I come here a lot. Little bit about me. I work in Maplin in Wood Green. You could use my staff discount if you like. I love my mum. I'm good at cooking Thai food. Lived out there for a bit. I'll cook us a lovely massamum on the night you move in, if you and your daughter move in. The room is free. I wrap some meat around a chip and dip it into the paper pot of garlic sauce. It has taken me 80 rejections from estate agents to reach this point. You walk into the estate agents on the back foot when you're a single mother. They assume low wages and consider self-employment slang for universal credit, which of course it is these days if you're part of the underclass. But throw in bad credit and no guarantor and you'll find the door to private renting slammed shut in your face. And I'm one of the lucky ones. My current landlord has agreed to return my full deposit, meaning that if I add this month's wages to the moving pot and forgo food and skip on the utilities, which of course I will, because what's another debt on an already out of control list? Then we'll have £3,000 to our name, a whole £3 grand in cash. The things you could do with £3 grand. If I could drive, then I could buy a cheap car for us to live in. We'd live in a car, that's what we do. Families do that all the time these days. Or I could blow it on flights to some hick town in America, grab a motel for a few weeks whilst we search for a cult to join. If we pretend to follow the Lord, I could become a Mormon seventh wife and we'll be sorted. We'd be living a lie, but I would live a lie for the rest of my life for a stab of stability. I now understand why so many people remain in loveless, abusive marriages. I get it. You think they're hanging on to it all for the kitchen islands and the 2 Mark Warner holidays each year, but it's deeper than that. The room is free. We tread the underworld of Gumtree, open rent, and the depravity of handwritten adverts in newsagent windows, masseuses, naked cleaners, slumlords, but most of them insist on credit checks too. Credit checks, the modern equivalent of the discriminatory no dogs, no blacks, no Irish posters placed in landlords' windows during the 1950s. It's just that these days, they're not allowed to be so openly racist. So they have shifted their focus onto classism, which of course, not so secretly, incorporates racism with a dash of misogyny too. One shop window landlord refused to rent us a squalid studio on a rough Camden estate with the following words: single mothers like you seem nice at first. You and your daughter, you seem lovely. You're charming and you're working. Good for you. But my experience of women like you is that something always goes wrong. It always goes wrong. Then you stop paying rent and I must evict you, and you trash the place, smash holes in the walls and shit in my sink and pull up the toilet with your own bare hands and drag it onto the balcony, that kind of thing. I laughed because she was funny. And she does have a valid point. We will be hit by a sanction or an unavoidable expense and something will go wrong. That's just what happens when life is lived in the gig economy without the safety net of family support. But I won't shit in your sink, I tell her. But my bank statements, hard cash and landlord reference make no difference when I fail the credit check. That's a no then? That's a no. If I'm rejected for over 80 properties in the space of 3 weeks, then what hope does someone with absolutely nothing have? The answer is up to 12 years in temporary accommodation and a life that no longer belongs to you. Moved between travel lodges and rat-invested flats on the council's whim, and most definitely removed from London. Places like Peterborough prepare to accommodate our temporary 12 years. 12 whole temporary years. That's my daughter's entire childhood wiped out. I'd serve less time for assassinating the housing minister. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think it's worth saying that, first of all, that was beautifully read. And it's worth saying that at one point you actually go back to the old room is free guy and say, I need it. Actually, you say no, and then you have to go back to him and say, I need it. And then he says, oh no, sorry, it's gone to a woman who will kiss me.
Yeah. Can't even get a break there. No one will.
The other reason I'm pleased you read that out loud is because there's a really fabulous author's note at the start of the book, which I will read to everyone now. It says, the words on these pages were not intended to be read in silence, so please say them out loud whenever you can, preferably to someone who doesn't want to hear them. And I love that, because it's your voice coming through, but also it seems to be what is at the heart of the book, which, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems that you are trying to get through to people who really don't understand what it's like to be a single mother, working class, living in austerity Britain today. Was that your mission?
Yeah. I mean, yeah, you've got it. Obviously, that note worked. I'm pleased that you that it made sense to you. But also, I think it was kind of a way to protect myself as well, because I know that I didn't want to write an academic style book. My background is in theatre. I wanted to write something that was almost a performance. Which works on so many levels, because when you are working class and you're in poverty, you're living a constant performance, and that's why I wanted to make the book almost quite performative in a way. So therefore, it does work to be spoken out loud. I think any of the chapters could work as a monologue on stage. Well, that was certainly my intention anyway.
Brilliant. That's absolutely. So, and it feels like you are sort of speaking very much on behalf of single mothers who you say have been silenced, sidelined, demonized. And actually, it was quite interesting. I think I'm right in thinking you wrote this book 2010 when Cameron came to power. It covers the period from 2010 to 2018.
Well, actually, it starts in like May. No, it starts just before. No, so like March 2010. And actually, I didn't finish writing it until April 2019. Was when I felt really behind when I was writing it, and I wrote it between like the November 2018 and April 2019. So I was writing right up to the line. So that's how current it is. It goes right up to those dates.
And it's covered that whole sort of Conservative government. And you talk about, being pregnant with Biddy, your daughter, when Cameron enters office. And then later on, actually, during the London riots, you hear him blame, amongst other things, the London riots on children without fathers. How did that make you feel?
Well, I mean, that these politicians think like that because their policies are designed to portray that to wider society. So that this is something that's in their heads. But when it's said out loud, I guess there's a certain anger that comes with that, and a defensiveness to try and prove that you're not like that. But unfortunately, this is not an opinion that has changed since 2010. I mean, you only have to look at Boris Johnson's comments only last year. So it's
if anything, it's got worse.
Yeah, well, I think the longer you let people get away with stuff, the more tyrannical they become, which I think is certainly the case with this government.
So I love that extract you read, and actually it touched on. You would have heard a little mention to Mark Vaughan holidays in there, which was one of the things I wrote down, actually, because all throughout the book you pepper these sort of references to these sort of middle class aspirations, all the way through. There's the sort of aspiring to have Joseph kitchenware. There's a whole bit about how you live in a place temporarily which has an Arga, which is actually a range master, but you pretend it's an Arga.
You're alive.
And Mark Warren, is Mark Warren Mark Warren holiday?
Warner, yeah.
Mark Warner. The Le Creuset cookware, the Abel and Cole, the Deliciously Ella recipes, the Loaf Sofa in the Sky package. As I was going, I was sort of chuckling and writing them down. And what was interesting about it to me is that you were aware how aspirational they are, but also how much you want them, but how much you're sort of interested in the idea that just being middle class is about consuming and owning things. And the moment you have a bit of money, you say I've got things. And was that an interesting moment for you? I mean, again, you can explain how that moment of living that lifestyle ended. Didn't end well, but it was an interesting sort of 2-year period where you had all those things, and you became quite attached to them.
I've always been fascinated by, I wouldn't call it culture, middle class culture, which is consumerism, and I've just been, I find it quite exotic that that so much value is placed on a certain branded holiday and a certain type of cooker. And for me, it means when I see that and want it, I'm kind of fighting everything I detest, so I'm I really want an Arga, but also I can see that middle class people, that the middle class are a stifled breed who have to kind of constantly maintain their standard of living so that they control the mechanisms of, so government mechanisms are kind of kept to keep them in control. So these people don't leave their jobs because they like having their things, and it just keeps everyone in check. So I think, like, I have being working class, I feel like I have a freedom or a different kind of insight to that. So of course I want it, but I don't want the prison that brings with it. So I think that's why I'm so obsessed with it.
Sarah Robinson is saying some really interesting things in the chat, and I'd love to come to her in a minute if she's up for it, just to talk about her experience. But for you, Cash, again, something that really impressed me about the book was you have these really eye-opening stories, about being beaten by the father of your child, shifting between temporary flats, like the extract that you read, using food banks, taking terrible jobs, and this sort of section where you are pregnant in a peep show where people pay £2 to get off on seeing you naked with your large pregnant belly. But it sounds sort of really grim when I say it like that, but you're really, really funny about it. And
I don't find my life grim. I don't find my experiences grim at all. That's just experiences that I've had, and I've always been seeking out interesting experiences, and there was, what's the better story, working in a call centre when you're pregnant, or
that's not one of the grim ones I was referring to. I'll read a little bit, which I thought was a really funny line about something quite dark. And it's again about, it's quite early on in the book, and it's the father of your child. And you write about the black eye he's given you for Christmas. In all fairness, he's also given me a box of milk tray, but the injury has a personal touch. Handmade presents are more memorable, aren't they? It sort of pulls you up, that kind of line, because it's funny, but it's pretty dark, and it kind of felt funny at the time.
Well, obviously, like, domestic violence isn't funny. There's absolutely no question about that. And when I think back to that time, I was, very, very sad and very scared. Didn't know what to do. Was very alone, and couldn't ever see myself escaping that situation. But I wrote it, with almost a decade of hindsight, and I think the working class way is to deal with things in a dark humour. I think that's just a natural, defence coping mechanism that lots of lots of people who've escaped dark experiences,
Yeah.
use to make their life bearable. We all have to find a way to live with ourselves and live with our experiences. And I think humour is a really healthy way to go about that.
Absolutely.
That is quite a funny line, actually.
It's a good line. I mean, it's a good line.
I'm happy with it.
Yeah. I'll come to Sarah, who I think should be there, and then I'll come back and ask you some more. Hello, Sarah.
Hello. I wasn't expecting this. Hi.
But you were writing some really interesting things about your own experience in the chat, so sorry to...
No, it's fine. I was just saying how refreshing it is to hear a voice. I just caught the end of that reading, but that your voice just feels so vital, and that point about kind of using humour and dark humour to get through really difficult situations. But I really feel like we don't hear from single mothers enough. I just feel, and the narrative around single motherhood, of it being kind of choice, is really difficult. And then in my situation, so I kind of had to move from London. I lived on benefits for a while. Fast forward 10 years and I started my own company, and we were having those 2 lovely holidays a year. We were all of those things, but I absolutely reject the narrative that was to do with, there was a bit of hard work involved, but there was also a lot of luck. And I count my blessings absolutely every day that I was able to kind of claw my way out of that, but it wasn't because of me. And we were using food banks before they were called food banks. It was a Salvation Army thing around the corner, and so I try and do as much as I can to help our kind of local food bank now. But I just wanted to say thank you for writing it. Sorry, I don't want to wang on about it.
Oh, thank you. No, that's really nice.
Sarah, thank you for sharing your experience, and the wang on was lovely.
Thank you. And it is really nice when people feel that because I don't represent anyone other than myself, and I say that in the book. I'm not a voice for single mothers. I'm not a voice for anyone, but I think the stories resonate with lots of different people, because if you are living in poverty, you're going to the same places. You are going to those food banks, and you are mixing with the people on your estate. But you said something interesting about hard work there. To say that someone who is a cleaner isn't working hard, or a nurse, nurses using food banks to suggest that these people are not working hard, that's why they don't get to have a Mark Warner holiday, is just utterly ridiculous. These people that have these experiences, who have the nice house, have the nice Aga, the 2 holidays a year, private school, whatever it is, often come from a long line of money, often, not always, of course, but it's very rarely about hard work. And I think that's what I was trying to say in the book. It's I have a reprise that constantly goes along with, I'm working bloody hard, and why is this happening to me? And it's because you hear lots like influencers on social media, I work bloody hard for this. And it's like, well, your mum did buy a house, so how hard did you work? So that's the kind of that I was just trying to make people understand that situation in the book, really. But thank you, Sarah. That's nice to hear from you.
Let's talk a bit about journalists and journalism. You're quite damning of journalists.
Yeah, I don't like. Well, I think where I'm from, it's you don't talk to the police and you don't talk to journalists, because these people you can't trust. They don't understand us, and they want to condemn you. And I did write a play back in 2017, which toured in 2018, which was about my distrust of journalists. So it's a weird situation to find myself in now, where doing things like this and being interviewed by journalists, or being appearing on the same panels as journalists. It's a real conflict for me.
I mean, one of the things you really say you hate is the idea of poverty porn, and the fact that people often came to you asking you to write something, but they sort of you often had something to say, but they kind of knew what they wanted to.
Used to. I mean, that still happens now. That's it happens all the time. I don't get offers from the Guardian or newspapers like that. It's always someone like Closer magazine, or do you want to tell us about this terrible thing that happened to you? And then, you know, you can, I've fell into that trap before, you know, you write something which is pretty decent, and by the time it appears in print, they've completely rewritten it to say, oh, poor me. So, you know, the representation that you see of working class women in those magazines, it's a complete fraud, it's a complete fake. You know, nobody is standing there with their arms out, cooking a pan of pasta with their sad face, wanting to tell their story. It's completely made up. It's
But actually, one of the other instances I was thinking of was that you were actually in a women's refuge,
yeah.
just really close to Grenfell, which in itself was in a horrific state. And why don't you talk a bit about that and your campaign and the journalistic reaction to what you were trying to say and what was actually said?
Yeah, well, I mean, it wasn't really a campaign as such, because, you know, we weren't like official activists, or, you know, we didn't have time to become activists, really. It was over one weekend. We were in this refuge, as I said, it was opposite Grenfell. Grenfell had happened just over a month before, so the whole area was it was a real, I don't know if you ever went around West London during that period, but there was something in the air that was, you know, full of anger and rage and sadness, and just, you know, it was something that it's difficult to put into words. But, you know, obviously we were part of that, because we were, you know, from our bedroom you could see, you know, the burnt shell of Grenfell.
And your daughter saw it as well, didn't she? I mean, your daughter said, "Are we going to get burnt because we're poor?"
Yeah, I mean, she was obsessed. She was absolutely obsessed with burning alive. And even now, we live in West London now. Whenever, like, we cross the Westway and she spots, oh, we're coming up to Grenfell, she will duck in the car so that she doesn't see it. So that's the level of trauma that something like that brings. But we were in this, like, really rundown refuge, and all the women who worked there had been complaining about the state of the place. You know, we had rats, we had mice, the ceilings were leaking, and they would keep saying, no, it's not, it's fine, this is okay, it's better than what you've run from, isn't it? You know, be grateful type thing. And one night the ceiling crashed in after us saying, you know, this is something bad is going to happen. You know, thankfully it wasn't a Grenfell situation, but you know, it could have been. So I contacted journalists and, you know, said that this is what's going on. You know, this is a political issue. This is, you know, we've been left to rot. The councils have been defunded, but women's refuges have been defunded by 30%. This is what happens. You know, this is the government have done this. But all the journalists wanted to talk to us about was like, oh, you know, how did he hit you? How many bruises did you have? Tell me about your sad situation. Do you want to go on Channel 4 News and we'll black out your face, and if you tell us about your sad situation? And I was just,
you said, I don't want you to black out my face.
Yeah, this isn't about domestic violence. That's what I kept saying. This isn't about domestic violence. This is about how government policy attacks the poor. We just happen to have been in a refuge. But no, it was they didn't tell the story of what it's like for refugees to be cut. I later did do something with the Bureau of Investigative Journalism where you know, won awards. It was, you know, it was a big deal. It was a really exposing long form piece that they did. But, you know, I just found that journalists see working class women as sources, or you're described as an activist. You're never considered reliable enough to be able to give your own version of events. It has to be channeled through a middle class voice. It's almost like we're not to be trusted. So that's what happened there.
And just on your other experience with journalists, which is the one we were just talking about before this started, you were looked into by the Guardian, I think you said it was, for literary fraud.
Yeah, which sounds like so exciting. Like that's a dream, isn't it? To be to have those kind of exciting things happen in your life, but to not be believed is well, it's pretty horrendous. So I certainly don't read the Guardian anymore.
And they contacted the guy who punched you. And
yeah. So what happened was there was I was stalked for a year before the book came out by someone who turned out to be someone quite well known, and she had put online that everything in my book is a lie, that I'm a fraud, that I'm really a wealthy woman, I'm not working class, you know, all these kind of things. And this journalist from The Guardian had stumbled across this and had taken it as fact. You know, they'd said I had lied about living in a refuge, which was really funny because The Guardian had covered the story about the refuge ceiling collapsing. It was me that contacted them. So it's, you know, all the evidence was there that I was telling the truth. But, you know, this journalist pursued me like I was J.T. Leroy, and, you know, just wanted to kind of take me down for some reason, and ended up, as a consequence, because she didn't believe that I had fled domestic violence, ended up contacting the person who had gone to a refuge to escape, obviously putting me and my daughter in massive danger. And obviously there was, you know, that proved there was no article to be had. It all kind of disappeared. But, you know, I had to pick up the pieces of that. It's like when the police raid your house maliciously, they don't repair the door, they don't put everything back in their drawers. It was, you know, it was that kind of situation. So yeah, it didn't help with the way I feel about journalists. If I distrusted journalists before, certainly after that experience, you know, and The Guardian, you know, virtue, you know, the most virtue signalling paper out there, you would think would be on the side of a working class author who's, you know, telling this story that doesn't normally get to be told, but instead I was disbelieved by them. So, you know, yeah, not good.
Okay, can I just go to my colleague Zav? Oh, is he there? I mean, I don't know if he's prepared for this, but he just said something quite interesting in the chat about his own experience as maybe he's not ready. I think I just saw him drop out and then come in again. If my colleague get Zav ready to talk about what he was talking about before in the chat. In the meantime, oh, there you are. You are there, Zav. Hello. You were just talking about your own experience and your own mother. And
yeah, so I'm having quite severe internet issues today.
You and half of London today.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I think it was what people were talking about earlier in terms of aspiration and consumerism, and it resounded with me quite a lot because my mum, so my mum's side of the family, we were kind of born in a very small kind of council estate house in Burnley, lived with my nan until I was 6, and then moved kind of over to Yorkshire. And my mum is a single mum. She's never been married. There's 4 of us from 3 different fathers who she's kind of brought up on her own kind of through the years. And yet it's quite difficult with her because she will always refer to herself as Mrs., not Miss. She will always hate if there's any kind of suggestion that we are kind of working class. I think like many people with a kind of local northern accent, she very much has a phone voice. When I went to university in Oxford, and when I went, it was always difficult to get her to come to any dinners or to come to any events. And even kind of when she came to graduation, she kind of shied away from it a lot because she almost felt kind of embarrassed by the fact that she didn't speak like, you know, the kind of middle-class parents of Oxford did. And just as kind of a humorous aside, because you were talking about consumerism as well, she also has the world's largest collection of Emma Bridgewater kind of cups, plates, and bowls. And if that isn't a sign of kind of middle-class aspiration, yeah. Emma Bridgewater, I'm not sure what it is. But yeah, I find it a tricky subject because I'm kind of quite proud of our upbringing and proud of her as a single mum, but then she doesn't really take much pride in her kind of herself, which I find interesting.
Well, it's hard to take pride, isn't it, when society is saying that you're disgusting? If you're, you know, the words that are always used to describe working class women, working class single mothers, is vile and vulgar, and you know, my way to get around that was to pretend not to be working class, which probably seems insane to people when they hear my voice, because I clearly have a very common Southeast London accent. So it's what you said about your mum changing, you know, saying that she's Mrs. It's really funny because actually just before I did this, I had a call from my doctor and she said, "Oh, is that Mrs. Cash Carraway?" And I was like, "Yes, it is. Yes." And because I remembered I had put on my bank statement and my doctor's registration form Mrs. because you just want to be accepted. So personally, for me, I had a period of time where, you know, I changed my name. But I think I spoke about this in the last ThinkIn that I did with you guys. And you know, my birth name is Kelly, which I changed to Cash once I reached adulthood for reasons of, you know, family, you know, wanting to break ties with my family. But there was a time when Cash isn't exactly an aspirational name. It's funny, but it's not aspirational. And, you know, I was applying for jobs, I changed my name to Camilla. Suddenly the world opened, and, you know, you put on your phone voice and you change your name to Camilla, and, you know, suddenly, you know, all sorts of things happen. You're suddenly taken seriously.
It's interesting talking to both of you, actually, because one of the lines I wrote down from what you just said about this, because one of the lines I wrote down for the book is, you only get to be proudly working class when you've left that world behind. Would you say you are proudly working class with the success of your book? Or
I'm certainly allowed to be working class now, because it's not noticed as much, because like I live in a nice part of London. I go, you know, my daughter attends a very middle class school, not private, obviously. I wouldn't do that. She goes to a nice local state school where I think maybe without my book and without all the stuff that's come with that, I wouldn't be treated the way that I am. I think that I would feel inferior, and I'm allowed to be myself now, you know. I'm allowed to use my own accent, and I'm allowed to talk in my own way, because I'm not seen just as a single mum. I'm a single mum who happens to be an author, who writes for TV, who has all these other things. So it's kind of allowed, you know. So yeah, of course, you know, it has changed. Am I proudly working class? I think I am now. Yeah, I am. Was I unproud of it? Well, I was ashamed many times, but I always called myself working class. And if I was around someone who was incredibly posh, I would make my accent even more common to know that I was different from them, because I didn't want to be like them, you know. So it's a confused pride, but it becomes less confusing the more you're able to move away from it, if that makes sense.
Absolutely, yeah, absolutely. There's someone in the chat talking, Hazel, who I'd love to come to in a bit if she'll let me. But first, I'd just love to talk a little bit, because you talked about abandoning your, you know, wanting to separate yourself from your family. I would say that men come off particularly badly in your book, not just, you know, your exes who punched you in your face, but your father, who you write about really wonderfully. And actually, you know, it seems that every sort of month or two you write to him, send him a message every 3 months, say, "This is my final message I'm ever going to send to you," and you send him the same message 3 months later. But one of the things that I pinpointed, I'm just going to read this bit because you wrote about him: "He will be reading this now. He'll have bought this book. No, I'll have sent him a copy via my agent just to prove I'm worth something. So he'll be reading this now, and he'll be shaking his head and sighing. The bits that really cheese him off he'll read out to his wife, and then he'll laugh mockingly as he speaks the most horrific words out loud. Conflicted by his own emotions, proud of his daughter as a published author, yet disgusted by the filth she has no choice but to write." What was his reaction to the book? Because it's such a brilliant sort of, it made me think, God, I wonder how he did react when he read that.
Yeah. Actually, so I haven't spoken to my dad for that's exactly a year. I haven't spoken to him for a year. So I'm going to sound really ridiculous, but I'm going to say it anyway. Just before the book came out, I did an interview with Janice Turner in the Times, and the headline was stripper, sofa surfer, single mum, new voice of a generation. And like normally, like you have that headline, the stripper, single mum, sofa surfer. That's you'd see that in Closer magazine or Take a Break, and that's how I'm viewed by the world. But for me, it was made okay because
the voice of the generation.
That's good on the front of a book, and that will always have been said. So that for me, that was like, oh, okay, this bad stuff has been written, but this is also quite brilliant at the same time. And my dad is a huge fan of Janice Turner, and he really loves those kind of nice middle-class journalists of a certain age. Jane Moore, big fan of hers. He likes Sarah Vine. He's you know, who he refers to as Mrs. Gove, like he's really clever. But he so I was really excited for him to read this article because I knew he reads the Times. He would, you know, he would have been really excited to have read it, and he didn't. It sounds so stupid. He didn't message me. Like, I'd been called the new voice of a generation, and he didn't send me a text to say he'd read it. Nothing all day, and I'm checking my phone. You know, this is the biggest thing that's ever happened to me, the nicest thing that's ever happened to me. You know, why, career-wise, like why doesn't he care? Nothing I do is good enough. So then I got really drunk and sent him a message late at night and said, that's it, we're done. This is the last time you'll hear from me. This is it. You don't even care when I've been called the new voice of a generation. And I blocked his number, and I haven't spoken to him since. So
that really was the last one.
It really was the last one, and I know that he would have read it, of course. His reaction, probably very ashamed, I imagine, but secretly has a little hint of pride. You know, he wanted to be a writer. He was.
If he wanted to be a writer, I'm sure it's on some level a bit of weird jealousy.
Yeah. I think you're probably right about that as well. Yeah. Sorry, this is turning into a therapy session, but
I do have that reputation in the therapy. They called me. I'm gonna come to my friend Hazel, in fact, who has been talking about her own experiences in the chat. Hello, Hazel.
Hi. Cash, I just wanted to tell you how much I loved your book, which I listened to as an audiobook, which I think you read.
I did. Yeah.
Which I love. Say it again, sorry.
I had really bad hay fever at the time, so my nose is very blocked. I'm really embarrassed about it, but yeah.
I love audiobooks anyway, and I loved it, and I loved hearing you read it. But what I was saying in the chat is, I think one of the things that you really highlighted is how often that disbelief comes from allowing a multiplicity in the working class experience. And my experience is that I grew up on a council estate in the 80s in Crawley. It was very different then because it was before Right to Buy. So there was a big mixture of people. And we lived there because my dad was a social worker. And when you worked for the local authority, you were given a house. And I feel like that's a really big part of I was brought up with very kind of, not a lot of money, but very sort of what you would imagine are kind of leftist middle class values, like whole food, hippies, you know, folk music, you know, feminism and all that. And sometimes and now my field is really predominantly middle and upper class. Actually, I work in opera, which is a great industry, but also problematic one. And sometimes when I say I grew up on a council estate and I went to the roughest school in town, I feel like there's a disbelief because I can't compute that I'm talking to someone who's articulate and intelligent and speaks with quite a well-spoken accent now. And I don't think that's true that you grew up in a council estate, because it's not Kes, you know. Yeah. Sometimes it feels like you can't allow that sort of, you can't allow that multiplicity of experience. Yeah. And I think your book really gave voice to that, not just in your story, but also in the women that you encounter along the way and the characters you encounter along the way. Precisely because you've come away from, you're saying, I don't just want to talk about what's the hardship and the pain and the Ken Loach vibe. which I appreciate that work, by the way, but
yeah.
And I really found that I really appreciated that, and it felt like it spoke a little bit to my experience, which was very stable, relatively prosperous,
Yeah.
you know, and all those things, but in which I hold a multiplicity of class identities, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I mean, the idea that art is something to only be enjoyed by the middle and upper classes is absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the working class has a long tradition of creating art, a long tradition of self-education. So it's completely normal for, you know, us to, you know, for you to go into opera. You know, it's not that strange that you did that. What is strange is the fact that when, you know, so for example, like I had a play that toured a couple of years ago, and people were saying, "Oh, she's not that working class, is she? She's writing plays." And what a bizarre concept. I mean, if you look at sorry.
I was just going to say that feels so familiar. The sort of the kind of, oh well, what you say you work in class, but you've got a phone, the flat screen. You've got
Yeah.
you read the Guardian. Well, you can't be that poor, you know, or whatever.
Yeah.
It might be. It's like you can't hold those two things. You've got to be scrambling around, or you can't.
I don't know where that comes from. I don't know where the idea comes from that we wouldn't be interested in great music and great literature. And, you know, certainly my experience and all my friends' experience as well was, you know, my dad used to take me to the theatre, and, you know, because you've always been able to get cheap tickets. You know, if you're, you know, a bit crafty, you can always find a way. And that, you know, and I guess maybe it's because you have the working class that kind of find those avenues might have a crafty, smart parent, you know. And it's I don't know. My experience of growing up wasn't Benefit Street, you know. That is a valid working class experience. But to say that the people behind closed doors are not interested in, you know, great television dramas or documentaries or great bands or, you know, anything that stimulates you is so offensive. It's so absolutely offensive. You know, all my favourite. Most of my favourite musicians and authors are working class, I guess, because I understand those experiences. But you have to seek them out, don't you? You have to seek out those artists a little bit more in depth. But yeah, I completely relate to what you're saying.
And actually, Cash, some of the interesting. Thank you, Hazel. As somebody has said in the chat, point very well made, Hazel. So. Funnily enough, one of the interesting things about it towards the end of the book is when you get your sort of breaks, which are the $5,000 for a play that you got to write, and immediately you get that sort of break, you declare it, and then you lose your housing benefit, and you know, threatened with eviction quite soon. And actually, this sort of moment of breaking, you know, having this really good bit of work received. You're suddenly, you know, living. I've read you were living in a homeless hospital in Maidstone when you got your publishing deal, and you were actually writing in the hostel, and the people who oversaw the computer didn't believe that you were writing a memoir.
So I'd moved. By the time I started writing the memoir, I was living in on an estate in Marden in Kent called the Cockpits, which I view in hindsight with such love. And, you know, the people there are just lovely, and there's like an amazing community there. But at the time, oh my God, it was my idea of hell. I'd been moved out of London into the middle of nowhere. But when I got so when I submitted the proposal, I was living in, I was just getting, no, actually, I just before I got made homeless, I submitted the proposal, and then it takes a few weeks, doesn't it, to go through acquisitions and all that stuff. By the time we were living in the homeless hostel, that was when I got the phone call saying you've got the deal, which again, it's just one of those beautiful moments, isn't it, where it's better to get that phone call than to be living in a hostel than to be living in a lavish house. That's it makes for more of an interesting story, but at the time it was you know, pretty horrendous. But yeah, so I did write the book mainly from the Cockpits estate in Marden.
Paul Atherton, one of our regular members, hello Paul, has written in the chat he loved Alexander McQueen's story, that he'd never show his face on, you know, the fashion designer, he'd never show his face on the media, and they thought it was because he was being a pretentious fashion designer, but it was actually because he was still claiming DHSS and wasn't making enough money in his brand. brand to sign off, and that gives you an indication of what it's like.
Yeah.
Everyone else, please do stick your hand up or say something in chat if you'd like to talk to Cash. Otherwise, I will keep going. So I just want to go back to the whole voice of a generation thing, and wonder if you or feel anxious at any point about becoming the austerity spokesperson.
Yeah, that's well, firstly, to be called the new voice of a generation is the worst thing that you could actually, it feels nice in that moment, but it's actually the worst thing you can actually ever say about a writer, because immediately people are like, well, is she? I don't think she is. I'm better than that. I know that if I saw a book by someone in Waterstones and it said on the thing new voice of a generation, I'd immediately hate that author and would go into that book being like, come on, prove yourself. So because I'm aware of that, I don't feel any pressure from that kind of statement. In terms of being the voice of austerity, well, I'm not, because I don't live in poverty. I don't live in poverty anymore. So it would be a lie to go around saying this is what it's like for us, because I don't live that life anymore. But I do have experience of that life, and it does annoy me, because I don't want to be writing about working class experience forever. I'll always write from the perspective of a working class woman, because that's inevitable. You write coming from where you're from. That's always the case. But to be this kind of person who's writing about who's kind of this is a problem I find. Like a lot of working class authors, black authors, they're kind of made into activists rather than writers. And I'm not an activist. I am a writer, and I've been writing since, I've been having work published since 1999. And just because you haven't heard of a writer until now doesn't mean that they haven't been writing all that time. And I found a lot of people were thinking, that I started writing the book at the age of 38, and that was the first thing I'd ever done. The publishers weren't walking around, council estates trying to find the next working class voice. I was writing, I was out there, I was doing stuff. So there's no way I could ever be the voice of austerity, because well, I'm not.
Thanks. Two people I'm going to come to next. My boss, James Harding, who's got his hand up, and Jade, who's been saying some interesting things in the chat. Hello, James.
Hello, Meripy. And thank you so much for doing this. It's so great hearing you talk, and it's so interesting what you elicit in terms of from other people and the way they respond to you. So I just wanted to say thank you. But actually, I just wanted to ask you about something different, which is what you think now, and looking ahead at the next 6 months to a year, maybe even 2 years, about writing plays and writing books, and what the world looks like now in terms of, where you think you're going to be able to put on plays, what kinds of things you're going to, what story you're going to feel like you can tell, because it's all very talk about sort of the austerity of the last 10 years. We're going into something now, which is obviously, to put it mildly, grim. And I'm just interested to know what you're thinking about, and what you're where you think you take this now, and whether or not it's possible to get a platform, whether it's a publishing deal or some kind of theatre that you can stage a play. What about now?
Well, I mean, like everyone else, I'm flummoxed by what's next, in terms of, you don't know, we don't know when we're going to escape this. But creatively, I'm supposed to be putting on a play next summer. Who knows if theatres will be open then. I do have a publishing deal for a second book with Ebury, Penguin Random House again. Will I be writing about austerity with the effects of COVID, Corona, whatever? I don't think so. I think that it would be too obvious to do that.
Are we allowed to ask what your next book is about?
Yeah. My next book is called Fleshpot, and it's set in 1990s Soho, around the time of Britpop. It's another memoir, but it serves as an allegory to the kind of pitfalls of neoliberalism and capitalism. And I think I've made it very difficult for myself trying to turn my own life into an allegory, but I'll get there. I haven't started writing it. It's not out until spring 2022.
Okay, and let's go to Jade. Jade, are you there?
Oh, hold on. Can you hear me?
Hello, Jade.
Hello. Sorry, I'm really red. I've just realised how
very sunny and with a lovely backdrop.
Well, I've been sitting in the garden and I've finished reading your book today. It's been unbelievable. It's just brilliant. I'm not gonna go on, but it's just been amazing. And I didn't know there was an audio book of it, but I'm so glad that I've actually read it, because there's nothing better. So I'm an actress. I'm from South East London, and there's nothing better than picking up a script or a play or a book and being able to hear your own voice in the words, because I think, and yeah, that's just something. So I've loved reading it. Thank you so much. And I actually did take that Scroungess.
I saw it. You were brilliant. I was just about to say, like, I started crying when I saw it. Just to put it into context, Jade is an actress, and she put did you enter it to a competition?
I entered a competition, and I was looking for. Oh, well, I mean, I wasn't looking for monologues. I entered a competition, and it had to be a new monologue. But reading your book, I was just like, this is a bloody play. Like, I've got to do this. So I went through. I've got about. Oh, I can't tell you how many monologues I'm nicking out of your book.
Oh, thank you. No, your performance was absolutely amazing. I was like, oh my God, this is just like one of the nicest things I've ever seen. So thank you for doing that. That was really nice. I'm really pleased, because you're from Rotherhime, aren't you? Yeah. So you have the same accent as me. You speak in the same way. And it's nice when someone from your area reads it as it's supposed to be read, like they've heard that voice and it's coming across right. So that's really nice. Thank you.
And all the little, like, all the places, I'm like, oh, no there, you know. Yeah, it's really nice to read it. And I was just going to go on the point of, like, the like working class in the arts industry. So for me, I went to drama school, and I was saying earlier, I mean, I couldn't afford drama school, but I went there and begged, borrowed and stealed for the money to finish off the grant, because they only gave me a deduction of it. But what I'm trying to say is it's at the moment with the arts industry now is like a bit of a pivotal moment for working class artists and actors to be able to actually speak up and be heard. Because for me, when I was at drama school, it was just, you know, they was knocking my accent out of me. I was, you know, I just didn't fit in with a lot of them. And, you know, the syllabus and things like that, it was just, nothing spoke volumes. So it's really refreshing to, like, and like you said, you have to search for these writers, you have to search for these artists, because, like, your story, and as long as with other working class person's stories, like they say them, and is this kind of like, oh, let's tell us about your sad story, and let's and I just wanted to say how refreshing it was, and how much I can't wait to continue to reading your story out loud, because it's blinding.
Oh, well, I feel honoured that you're doing it, because you're just amazing. So thank you.
Have you spoken before? Have we brought you together for the first time?
This is the first time we've met. Yeah.
I'm happy we've done that.
I know.
Well, I saw it and I was like, and it's lovely hearing your voice, because, like I say, I read the book myself, but then, you know, when you put someone else, the person's voice to it is great. Yeah, thank you.
But no, thank you. I appreciate it.
Look, we're running out of time, so I've just got one last thing I want to ask you about, which is your daughter. And just towards the end of the book, you know, you talk about your anger being transformed into hope, and hope with her, and, you know, watching her get political about climate change and veganism. And I just wondered if you could talk a little bit about, you know, the hope you feel for the next generation.
Oh, well.
She sounds amazing, your daughter. She sounds amazing.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, she is amazing. And, you know, I think the hope comes from the fact that when you've gone through a really difficult period, you see how that makes a child grow, how that makes a child kind of view the world in a kind of, not even in an adult way, just in a more assured way. And I think that's where the hope comes from, because I know that I never had the courage to speak out about things that made me feel uncomfortable. Even now, I don't, I struggle, and I try and, I get very, very nervous about saying something political, or something that, people would consider said to make a change. But when I see the way that that my daughter has these experiences, these terrible experiences that she's had, and it's given her a confidence, I can see that would be the case for other children of working class single mothers, or other children who've gone through a really tough time. So that's where the hope comes from. In terms of hope in the sense of the world, I have none, like whilst we have this government, all bets are off. Who knows what other terrible things could occur. But the hope comes from the fact that these terrible experiences give people a chance, give people a view where they're able to speak up with confidence. And I hope that for my daughter, and I hope that for other children who've gone through similar situations, of which there are millions. There's absolutely, this story isn't unique. The story is unique to me, but the themes that it encompasses are so widespread. When you think of how many, we have 4 million children in food poverty, especially over this period, where it's so difficult for them to be given free school dinners. The government didn't want to feed these children. So there's lots of children who've experienced that, who will come out of this stronger. Sorry for the ramble. I concise
not
in
a
my
ramble, not a ramble. Stop apologising. Cash, thank you. I could talk to you all night, but we've run out of time. And just to say, repeat on behalf of everyone, how much I love the book. You talked at the start about the dark humour, the coping mechanism of the working class, and I know other people agreed with that. That's a brilliant way to get through difficult things. Sarah in the chat made the point, and again, that we don't hear from single mothers enough, so it's a real privilege to hear from you. And Hazel, you talked about the multiplicity of experience and how we don't hear that in the media, of the working class experience, how we don't hear that in the media enough. And Cash, I was embarrassed, and I winced a bit when you said, where I come from, we don't talk to police and we don't talk to journalists. So as a journalist, I have to say thank you for taking the time on behalf of our breed. Jade, just at the end there, when you talked about how this was a really pivotal moment for working class artists like yourself, and how they try to stifle your voice, I thought that was really in drama school. I thought it was in your accent. I thought it was a really interesting idea, and who knows what dark places this government and the coronavirus will take us. But I will say I will really look forward to your next book and seeing what your daughter and you achieve in the future. You talk about your daughter having her difficult experiences, giving her the confidence of a voice, and you've obviously got a new confidence from it, and I think we've all benefited from hearing and reading about it. So thank you very much for your time. Thank you for your book, and I hope to see you again. And thank you for our Tortoise members for your contributions. See you again.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Politely wave you out because we can't clap. Thanks, Cash. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Oh, thank you so much for that. That was really enjoyable. Are you there?
Yeah, I'm there. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Cash. That was brilliant. It was lovely to see you. I hope to see you again soon. Well
Yes,
done.
you too. Thank you. And thank you for having me, everyone. I really appreciate it.
Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.